what looks like virtual darkness, but it's just another grey drizzling day in Buckinghamshire. We'll being a tour guide that very shortly is out of work, see flex the old creative muscles maybe, and continue from a video I did bloody ages ago, it seems now, about that took us from the start route Green Park to Regent Street. So you have to forgive me, chaps, because I'm a ruddy idiot, even though I know where I'm going, so to speak. I've got Google Maps up, and I think I'll try and take us down to, Waterloo. Now, essentially, Regent Street was part of a grand design, really, to lead up from what is now the Mall all the way to Regent's Park. And it was meant to be this kind of grand colonnade of buildings all the way from here to there. And there was meant to be a palace at either end of it. Neither palace was effectively realised, essentially. Buckingham House was kind of off down the road from the foot of it, and it's now Buckingham Palace, of course, because Queen Victoria wanted to get away from her mother, more if I ever get to the out part. And it was designed by the late, I say late, he's been dead for a couple of centuries, John Nash, who did Trafalgar Square and Buckingham Palace and a few other bits and pieces. Now, what you see of last year, Buckingham Palace, Regent Street marked 2 centuries of existence. It came into fruition in 1819 during the reign, the last year at that, of George IV. Old Georgie Porgy, who kissed the girls and made them cry, had spent a fair bit of his adult life known as the Prince Regent, which is, as far as I'm aware, not been used by anyone since. There was talk of Prince Charles becoming a Prince Regent too soon, and the Queen give up the throne because of old age. I mean, I don't be rude, if she hasn't given up the throne now, by now she's not going to give it up any time before, you know. And old George was the oldest child of George III, poor old mad King George, who until Queen Victoria was the longest serving monarch in this country's history, the better part of 50 odd years, was king when the colonies became the United States of America and was said to be wretchedly sad, and his son was a gluttonous fool. No one particularly cared for him, it seems, outside of his mates probably. And he took on the role of king, effectively, hence why he was Prince Regent, because his father became ill. Now, there's still debate, of course, to this day, whether George III was in fact mentally ill, or just had some kind of illness that gave the symptoms. Whatever the case, George became king outright, George IV, in 1810. And was a man, shall we say, of considerable ego. So Regent Street was merely one part of it. Excuse me, I'm saying things a little bit different to the bus, because usually the buses come off Conduit Street, and if the traffic's good, we're all the way up Piccadilly Circus like that. But Regent Street is named for it, and you could say the King's part of it really is between Oxford Circus, which was going to be named Regent Circus at one point, and Piccadilly Circus. Now, in the 1930s, somebody wanted to put a glass canopy between the two circuses over the road, and the reasoning, effectively, it seems that it was turned down, was that people said, well, think about what the pigeons are going to do to it, and how much money it's going to cost to clean it, and also how often you're going to clean it. You're going to look up it, and it's going to be this filled of shit, essentially. And they said no, and that was a couple of years before the Blitz. And if you can imagine what German bombs would have done to that, it doesn't bear thinking about. If you look at Regent Street between those two circuses, it's largely remained the same since the 1930s. It hasn't really been seriously remodelled. The road is probably widened and shrunk, but the buildings as they look are more or less as they would have been maybe 2 centuries ago. But there's been certain alterations. In the late 19th century, they remodelled some of the fronts because prostitutes and thieves were hanging about in the arches and stuff. That seems to be a common theme in late Victorian England. The walk craze on Tower Bridge were the domain of thieves and prostitutes, so they closed into pedestrian access until the 1980s. The Brunel Tunnel between Rotherhithe and Wapping, or Wapping to Rotherhithe, was meant to be this grand pedestrian tunnel, and after a grand dinner it became the domain of prostitutes and whatnot. Now it's where the London Overground runs, the former East London line on the Underground. The subway between Tower Bridge and Suffolk and the Tower of London, that is now a communications tunnel, again prostitutes and thieves. And the subway was also put out of business by the opening of Tower Bridge in 1890. I'm going to say 1891, Johnny. Oh God, don't look at me. And Regent Street is of course home to lights of Hamleys and Apple and whatever else is down there nowadays. And if you ever want to experience human carnage, go into Hamleys and try and get to the top floor at Christmas. When I was at uni, and I went to uni just above Oxford Circus at the Regent campus of the University of Westminster, my alma mater. My mum said, could you look in Hamleys for your brother, something for your brother? And I forget what it is now. And I said, yeah, sure. So I walked in there and, filled of people everywhere you look. And I said to myself, right, it's on the 4th floor or whatever. And it took me half an hour to get up and down and out of that bloody shop. Unfortunately, coronavirus has finished off Regent Street in the sense that when I went up there a month ago, it was quiet as the grave as far as Regent Street goes. And it's a shame really, because as I said, I went to uni just above Oxford Circus. I went to uni 2005 to 8, and you notice the crowd strengthening the closer you got to Christmas. And it's always a busy place, don't get me wrong, but I remember Christmas working on the buses when they got frantic. Hamleys Christmas week had managed to rope off some of the bus lane in front so that pedestrians could get past the shop, and there was just a frantic queue. And now look at it. The staff in the doorway always dancing and cheering, or at least they were. It's a kind of marker between Mayfair, away to our right, and Soho, away to our left. Now Soho is not named for or because of the United States equivalent in New York City. Soho is south of Harlem or something, isn't it? Either way, our Soho, it was meant to be a rallying cry by some obscure duke, and everyone thought he was mad. So that's just it. Now Soho is a byword for filth, you might say, smut, and it's got a fair amount of stuff, but it's a daytime and nighttime place. It's probably the most busiest place in central London on a Friday and Saturday night, because everyone goes there for a good time. And then you come down, there's always something going on, put it that way. So that takes us down towards Piccadilly Circus. This bend of the road into Piccadilly Circus is known as something I've forgotten. My God, I haven't been on the tour bus in 6 months. It leads us into Piccadilly Circus. And if you come down on a Friday or Saturday night, this is the busiest part of Regent Street, because everyone is coming down into Soho or wherever. And Piccadilly Circus is kind of like the focal point of the West End, really. You have 3 centres of the West End. One is Piccadilly Circus, the other is Trafalgar Square, and the other is Leicester Square. And it's changed a bit in the past few years. Eros used to be in the centre of Piccadilly Circus. There used to be a road behind it in front of the Criterion Theatre, and as you can see, it's pedestrianised. Nowadays you've got your street performers and other types. The busiest I've ever seen it recently was when some football team was coming over to play Arsenal in the Champions League, and you could not see the pavement for looking. And beneath is Piccadilly Circus Tube, which is in the top 3 busiest tube stations in London. It's mental. It's also the deepest tube station on the network. You can continue straight down the road, that is Leicester Square, one of the other busiest places off the West End. If you go up to your left, that's Shaftesbury Avenue, where most of our theatres seem to be, but of course there's others elsewhere. Soho is still to your top there. We're going to go down the Haymarket, which is where back in the day you quite literally bought your horses hay and feed, and now you've got Planet Hollywood very shortly down on your right there, with the original red Power Ranger in the window, or at least his costume. Takes you into Trafalgar Square, designed, as I say, by the great John Nash, for Nelson's famous victory at Cape Trafalgar in 1805. Nelson's last words were, "Thank God I've done my duty." Top of the square away to your left, free to get into at the moment, the National Gallery, for all sorts of works of art, including the Fighting Samurai. You've got your street performers across the top where the road used to be. St Martin in the Fields Church at the top right there, the Navy Church in some respects because of the Admiralty being close by. Nelson on this column, 160 odd feet high. He's meant to be looking towards either Portsmouth, where the Victory is still more to this day, or dry docked, or the Admiralty, which is the other side of the buildings there, the old home of the Royal Navy in London. Now it's at Northwood. The fountains work when they want to. You're not allowed to feed the pigeons, that's a £3,000 fine. All sorts of protests have happened here over the years, but also it's where public offence largely happen now. Passion of the Christ, Christmas, Jewish offence, Muslim offence, anything you name, it happens there. We'll head on to Whitehall around Charles I's statue. Charles I marks the centre of London, or at least it's meant to. They now reckon the geographical centre of London is in Lambeth, on the south side of the river. Whitehall is the byword for the British government, whoever's in charge, whoever's in opposition. But it was named for Henry VIII's palace, which burned down in 1689 when a cleaner left a candle by drapes and the whole lot went up. The only part, the major part of Whitehall that is left is Banqueting House, where Charles I was executed in front of. So you get horse guards on your right hand side. You can get right up close to the guards. You can touch horses, but don't grab them or whatever. You'll get showered to death. Don't get in the way of the chap on foot, because he will yell at you. And then you've got number 10 Downing Street away to your right, which is the home of the British Prime Minister ever since John Walpole in the 18th century. Walpole was known, he was officially the first minister, but he was known derogatory by his rivals as the Prime Minister on account of how much money he was spending, and that's to say, our money, the British public's money. Current Prime Minister, of course, is Boris. The cenotaph in the middle road is a centrepiece for annual commemorations to our war dead since 1919. It was originally made of wood and cardboard, and now it is of Portland stone. It's where the Queen and others gather on November the 11th, or the Sunday closest to it, to remember all those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Before you enter Parliament Square, get your first glimpse of Parliament. That's the old Treasury building array to your right. It's where Winston Churchill's cabinet war rooms lie beneath. The entrance is down facing St James's Park on the end. Churchill used to stand on the rooftop to watch the bombers come over. Churchill's favourite battleground was the Houses of Parliament, and he called it the theatre of democracy for very good reason, I'd imagine. It's always been the way it is now. It was during Churchill's time, it was when we tried the king in 1649, it was when Henry II got told, sort your act out in the 12th century or we'll sort it out for you. So there is Parliament Way to right, Gothic Majesty that it is. There's the clock tower, Big Ben is the bell within it. It's all being worked on into at least 2021, or it was before Corona. I don't know if they've readjusted it, but there's all sort of work they need to do. Get rid of the bird mess, there's German bomb damage from the war. There's a lot more wrong with it than they realised up until the start of this year, 2020. Westminster Bridge gives you your first glimpse of Old Father Thames. There is the London Eye Race to the left, opened in 1999 as the Millennium Rule. 32 capsules for each London borough. Second busiest or busiest London attraction. Definitely quiet now. County Hall behind it opened in the 1920s as the home of London government. Now that's down by Tower London. We'll swing in through Waterloo now. You're now south of the river, a place that traditionally was best left avoided because it's where all the dark stuff was. Your theatres, your animal fighting pits, your brothels, house of ill repute. I usually say everything else. That all changed by the time the Puritans took over after the Civil Wars. Waterloo now is the busiest train station in the United Kingdom and therefore London, with 99 million visitors a year. I bet that's changed. Destinations all over the south of England, really, from Portsmouth out to Plymouth. Wimbledon, the home of lawn tennis, is 15 minutes away by train. They leave every other minute. Going there at rush hour, it truly is an experience because everyone and their dog is there. There's that great main entrance now out to your right. This is called the Victory Arch, opened in 1922, and it bears the names of all those lost on Waterloo Station, the rail workers who died in the First War, and it now honours the memory of those that died from Waterloo Station in the Second. This entire road was a wall of flame on the last night of the Blitz, when the Germans went all out to give London something to remember before they went to invade Russia. Waterloo Bridge is the longest bridge in central London because it spans the bend of the River Thames, and you get the best views going of any bridge in London. Away to your left is the city of Westminster, the better part of 1,000 years of history. There's Parliament. All the way out to your right to St Paul's is the City of London, 2,000 years of history, and that is where we are gradually working our way towards. That's a rather brisk version, I'm sure you'll agree. I usually do an audio of it and then put pictures to it, but I don't want to be rude, chaps. It's too much at the moment and no one watches these, so I'm not really I will do one day, but I'm just doing this in a way to sort of keep the old grey matter going in case the phone goes and they say, do you want to come back and tour guide for a couple of weeks? Otherwise, I look like to be made redundant after the 21st of September. If you have watched the entire thing or listened to it, because like I said, I had Google Maps, although it's still showing Regent Street, so after a while I just had it in my mind. If you want more, if you don't want more, I'll do from, because the bus goes out through Aldwych, down the Strand into the city to St Paul's, down London Bridge to the Tower Bridge, Tower London, out back to Westminster, and then back to wherever we started. So the whole thing technically lasts 2 hours and 20 minutes, but this video is only taking about 20 minutes. No traffic. So yeah. Thank you anyway.